Hey, what's up everybody? It is Kellen here from Start Your Systems, and welcome to another edition of Track Walk in MX Simulator, where today I'm going to be playing the 2020 version of the Enduropale du Touquet, the French beach race that everybody I feel like is pretty familiar with. I think I've seen a lot about this reported over the years. I'm like a pretty big fan of these type of races, and I'm going to get into that in a second, but essentially what this track is just like this really long beach race. It's a 3-hour beach race on a 13-kilometer racetrack that happens in this town, Le Touquet, every year, and it's obviously like an enduro event, and it's part of the French Beach Race Championship, in which a lot of the like World Enduro Super Series riders compete in the series as well. But there's also a lot of like pretty well-known motocross riders that also compete in this event. It usually happens every year, I think in February, so the 2020 version has already happened. But in Sim, I'll be honest, I had no idea that this was going on. The ACF Racing crew has been putting on the Le Touquet beach race in Sim for the last 4 years, and it seems like it's a pretty much like French-based organization with a lot of French competitors, judging by the time of day that they choose to do the racing on and such, which is maybe a little bit of the reason why I didn't know, but I should have. And this is just like really, really cool that they've put this track together every year. I just felt like I came across it. I really was looking kind of at like some enduro tracks to do this week for Track Walk, and found this one. Just figured no one that I know has really seen this, so wanted to kind of show it off. And now it's really actually got me kind of jived for if the ACF Racing crew decides to do it again next year, to actually try to compete in it if they would so kindly welcome me. But yeah, so this event, it usually has about 1,000 competitors. There's like a pro class and an amateur class. It's a 3-hour race, like I mentioned, and it started back in the 70s when Thierry Sabine, who helped basically create the Dakar Rally, also coordinated with the town of Le Touquet to attract tourism basically to the town, I guess, and put this event together back then, and it's been running I think 40 some odd years now, 45 years or something like that, and a lot of big names have come through. I think probably most people watching this video that are motocross fans are going to ask like the obvious question of like, does Jeffrey Hurlings race this, or Glenn Coldenhoff and other things like that, and I believe Coldenhoff has actually tried this once or twice. Hurlings, I don't think, has ever done it because the time of the year that it's ran is like mid-GP prep for those guys, I would say. Like they probably put more attention into racing either the Italian series or some things like the Hawkstone International and a couple other things that happen in February right before GPs start. So I looked through some history books and I didn't find Hurling's name having competed in this event before. Again, I could be wrong, but that doesn't mean that big names don't compete. And in fact, just this past year, before the GP season got underway, a couple GP regular guys, I guess the guy that won isn't so much of a GP regular anymore, but he was at one point, competed in this event and won. So the winner from the 2020 Le Touquet was Milko Potasek, who raced GP. He's raced GPs for like the last 8 or 9 years. I feel like I've seen that name around a long time. But second, and a much more like noticeable name in the GP scene, was Jeremy Van Horbeek. So, big names do compete in these events. I guess this is one of the reasons why these guys are so dang good at the sand, because they basically are just like, let's go race for 3 hours in the sand and no big deal. But like I said, these events have always been really just so interesting to me. Like I like endurance racing on motorcycles, to be honest with you. The enduro stuff is like almost a little bit over the top for me sometimes, just because they're like the obstacles and stuff that they have to do are so difficult. But I like this because it's basically just like this gnarly beach sand that they mold a track into. They lay a bunch of banners and stuff around, some fencing, and then have a bunch of fans stand on the beach and have this gnarly race. Like, to me, that's just really kind of cool that this is a concept that exists, and it happens a lot in France. Like I said, there's an entire French beach race championship. I think there's like 4 or 5 rounds in it. Some people will remember that Glenn Coldenhoff competed in the Red Bull Knockout the last couple of years as well, and I know Jeffrey Hurlings has done that before in the past, and I believe that's also in the I think that's actually in the World Enduro Super Series, if I'm not mistaken, but I definitely know it's in the French Beach Race World Championship, or French Championship, I guess, because it's not a World Championship. And yeah, this stuff, it's just gnarly, man. Like, it's just deep sand for 3 hours. Bike's probably pretty tattered afterwards. I think you definitely have to make a couple pit stops to refuel, but you're basically just on your own trying to crank out a couple hours of sand riding, and that stuff, man, that's gnarly. But like I said, it seems so cool to me that this is stuff that happens. Personally speaking, like, this is a lofty goal, but I actually would really like to race this event one day. I know that there's like a support and amateur division that goes with it that starts behind the pro class. I don't know. Why not? Like, as a rider myself and someone who's really interested in motocross and stuff like that, these events are so cool to me because it is one of those types of things that you can just race on the same track as the pros. I'm going to go ahead and take a dive into the pits here. I think it's called Stand or something like that, but it's just the pits. And the way that they've laid it out here, ACF is just like a gnarly slalom course through the pits, but obviously there's a bunch of different trailers and motorhomes that you could go visit. In their race version of it, I don't believe you need to go through this at any point. Maybe you do need to once. Maybe it's like one mandatory thing through the pits. But just cool that they added this as part of the entire environment, because this is semi-realistic. Like, there is legitimately like a pit lane that you have to go through to stop and refuel or change goggles or whatever you need. And I like that they added this in, but just in general, I'm happy that they did this track at all, because I know we have a kind of like a strong enduro audience on the channel. When I do enduro track walk videos, people are pretty stoked about them. So like I said, I just wanted to kind of look at another enduro track in game that maybe I've missed out on that I wanted to do for a track walk, and came across this series that they've had for the last couple of years, and it's really, really cool, and I wanted to give them some love, give them some props. I will say that, like, track wise, it's pretty difficult. Like, I give them credit where credit's due, because they turned this into, I think, a 4096 by 4096 map from a 1024, because you can upscale tracks, and then you have to change the height map and the terrain HF file and stuff like that, and you have to play around with a couple of things so that you don't get completely chopped out, ruined tracks from how much you've upscaled the track. But it doesn't seem like it's super intensive on my computer. There's a little bit of lag, and I'm on pretty high graphics, but it's not terrible. And then they had to build this amazingly long track. Like, it's not a short track by any stretch of the imagination, so I give them credit. But I will say that it doesn't flow that well. Like, they have ruts in some different areas that don't feel right. The corners kind of have some kind of awkward flow to it. I almost wonder if that's intentional, though, just to kind of make it a little bit more oddball and just not a straightforward kind of like easy to ride sand track. It's more rough and tumble and stuff like that. Not 100% sure, but I do know that this is going to take, this takes a lot of work to get done, and it's just really cool that this is something that they take the time to put on every year, and definitely interested in trying to compete in it next time if I get the opportunity. Comes around, it seems like, in March or so gotta wait a whole nother year, but I'll be licking my chops until then, because this looks like it would be a blast to try to compete against other people on. And yeah, they got these like long straightaways, which is very similar to the actual Le Touquet beach race, where you kind of slalom through here. They have these long, right along the waterfront, right along the beach, kind of long straightaways. And these guys are gnarly, man. They just tuck in, they get into 5th or 6th gear depending on what gearing they've selected, and just absolutely rip down the sand. Oh man, almost got sideways coming into that corner. But yeah, like I said, just so interesting that this is type of racing that happens. It has always kind of piqued my interest a little bit more as a fan of the GPs here in the US, that you see a lot of these GP riders compete in this, because, like, I promise you, even though Glenn Coldenhoff and Jeffrey Hurlings and a couple of these other guys have done beach races like this in the past, you don't see Eli Tomac showing up to anything like this. I'm trying to think of something that could be comparable to this. Like, I almost think in some ways this would be Eli Tomac showing up to race like the Mint 400 or something like that, like a Baja race of some kind. It's not the same. It's point-to-point racing versus circuit racing still, but it's kind of like that, I would say, where it's just like such an off-the-wall event. Yes, it does have some aspects to it that would be motocross-y, and these guys could use it for training and stuff, but for the most part, it is just a completely different event from what they're used to. It's much longer. It's on a track that is way, way different than they're accustomed to racing. Even like the Lammels, the Valkenswaards, the Lierups, other things like that, while they are long sand tracks, they usually have some sort of rhyme or reason to the flow. They have tabletops and launch singles and stuff like that. This version of Le Touquet doesn't really do the exact justice of this, but for the beach race, they purposely have like these like mounds that you have to ride up and over that are like peaky. Like it clearly looks like they just like laid dirt there and just said that looks good and move on. And then they also build almost like rhythm sections, I guess, out of a bunch of rollers or singles in a long straight line for the real race as well. So again, like, yeah, maybe they have a wave section at Valkenswaard or something like that, but it, you know, only goes at most like maybe an eighth of a mile or something like that, not very long. But this one is like, nah, let's just build it in 1 full kilometer straightaway, just rollers nonstop that these guys have to deal with. So completely out there kind of stuff that these guys have to contend with. And yeah, it's just really cool that, you know, you have the World Enduro Super Series regulars, the Nathan Watsons, the Manuel Lettenbicklers, the Josep Garcias, other things like that compete in events like these. But you mix in the GP regulars. Petar Petrov has raced these. I think Sean Simpson has also raced some of these beach races. And then, like I said, Jeremy Van Horbeek competing this year. Steve Ramon even actually competed in the 2K race this year and finished 10th, former world motocross champion. I think he's in his 40s now or so, at least, probably getting pretty close to that age at least. So finished 10th and grinding it out in his 40s. Nice to see Steve Ramon still getting after it. But yeah, man, just really cool track here. Really nicely done by the ACF Racing crew to put together something like this. Just off the wall design. You know, I don't think most people that pick up sim are like, let's just do the Enduropale du Touquet race. They're thinking, you know, I'd rather race Glen Helen or some other track that is more synonymous with motocross because it's a motocross simulator. But then these guys put together this enduro race every year, and I think that this is awesome, man. This is clearly a lot of work. Props to them for taking the time to do it. And as I said, just kind of wanted to give them some props today. Let me try to finish up this lap here and see what lap time I get. I have a couple more corners to go, and then I'm also going to kind of continue on and go back at least to the start line again because I want to not go through the pit lane for one lap to kind of see what that looks like. But here we go, coming to the finish line. Let's see if it counts my lap at least. An 8:19, not terrible. In real life, you know, it's a 3-hour race, and the winners do about 15 laps. So if you do the math there, that's about 5 laps per hour. So you're looking at closer to like a 12 to 15 minute lap time for those guys, and it's definitely noticeable if you watch the broadcast back. Like going from one side of the beach to the other is like, it just takes such a long time, even wide open on the sand right next to the water. And almost getting a little sketchy there. So, you know, they're limited in sim because they can't build it that big. Like if they build it too big, it's literally impossible for multiple people to play at one time because it'll just be too computer intensive. So they do what they can. They kind of cut it off at a certain point here. Like I said, I believe this is a 4096 map, but maybe if one of the people that had a hand in building this track watch this video and could comment on if it is a 4096 or maybe they even expanded it further. That'd be really interesting to hear, obviously. Definitely have not been through this section before, but looks kind of cool. Jumping under this bridge, a little switchback, because I was in the pit lane last time, so I was kind of on the right-hand side of the track here. Swinging down into this corner, and that's where the pit lane rejoins right there. But yeah, bang up job these guys have done putting these tracks together. They've done it for 4 years. I checked out the 2018, 2019, and now the 2020 version. I figured I should just play the newest version of the track for a track walk just so that it kind of made the most sense. I actually do think that the 2018 version was my favorite of the 3 I played, just because I think it felt the best. But still wanted to play the newest track just so that we could kind of show it off, take a look at it, see what it looks like. I'm going to try to finish up, heading back to the start straight here. Just hopping through the bumps. Oh, brutal landing. I just can't imagine doing this for 3 hours. Like, it's, to me, I want to try. Like, it seems like a fun challenge, but gosh, man, you must be just absolutely exhausted by the end of this, because it is just sand whoops for days and trying to fight the bike as it kind of glides through the deep beach sand and stuff like that. Gnarly stuff. Like, the people who compete in this event, besides win it, like just anybody who competes in it, winners in my book, because I don't know, man, that's just gnarly stuff to be able to do this for 3 straight hours. But to each their own. Some people like that kind of gnarly aspect of it. Like I said, I wouldn't be opposed to trying it one day if make some buddies in France or make some buddies in Europe that want to give me a loaner bike that they wouldn't mind it's absolutely tattered by the end of the day, and yeah, fly over and try it one day. Probably digging myself a big grave here, because someone is definitely going to hold me to this, but I don't care. Like, that'd be awesome. I would love to try this one day. All right, made it back to the start line, so I'll end the video there as I'm going to kind of head down the long straightaways again. But hope you guys enjoyed this one. A little bit of an off-the-wall track walk today, one that you don't get to see very often. The Enduropale du Touquet in MX Simulator as I crash my way into the beach. Let's actually just ride off into the ocean for a little bit of fun. I wonder if they added like any bumps out here or anything. It looks like I'm actually going up in the water, and I'm probably about to go off the map over here, or is it just more water? It looks like it's just bluer water. Anyway, really awesome track by the ACF Racing crew here, and appreciate them building this track so I could do it for a track walk nonetheless. And I'll be trying to race it again when it comes back in 2021. So hope you guys enjoyed this one, and hope you're enjoying your Wednesday as well. My name is Kellen, and I'll see you guys in the next one. So long for now.